So you want to sign up with the Mercenaries Guild? Can't say I blame you. The pay is good, and most of the marked don't exactly have much to tie them to one place. It can be dangerous, though. Are you sure you're up for that? Dorley gave Xander a critical look up and down. I think so. Obviously, I'm still, pretty fresh to all this, but I need some way to make money, and I'd like to see and learn more about the world. Ideally, I'd like to mitigate danger as much as I can, but I understand that there's going to be some inherent risk involved. Fair enough. Once we get you signed up, open contracts are available to any member. But do you have any ideas for what kind of contracts you'd prefer? Thripus mentioned exploration contracts. Said my Artificer class would pair well with Soldier for those kind of missions. He also mentioned kill contracts, but I'm not as interested in those unless there's nothing else. I see. Well, there's just about always a kill contract on something up. Exploration contracts don't come up quite as often, at least in these parts, but you're in luck today. There is a contract to assemble a group to investigate and potentially clear out what might be some ancient ruins that will be heading out in the next week. There's still available space, so once we get you inducted, I'll add you to the list. No minimum level, fortunately for you. They aren't expecting much excitement, but it's standard practice to have places like that cleared before more thorough research or excavation is done. No one wants all their fancy scholars getting gutted by some crypt horror because they didn't do their due diligence in ensuring the place was cleared first. Bad for business. You just take a seat here. Dorley gestured to one of the stools that was on Xander's side of the counter, and we'll get the process started. Just signing a membership contract and letting me copy your status down, and then you're set. Can do. Xander sat down at the counter. Do you need my entire status? Can I show that? I've only ever shown a shortened version once to Thripus, and he had to explain how to do it for me. Yes, I'll need your entire status. Have to make sure you don't have any titles like murderer that would invalidate you from guild membership or anything like that. It's the same process as showing the shortened version like you did with Thripus, but you just sort of allow more? It's hard to explain. We've all been using the status window since we were children, so it's just intuitive for the average person. Give it a try and we'll go from there. Dory reached behind the counter once more and retrieved several sheets of paper as well as a quill and ink. All right, here goes. Xander opened his status up. You have defeated an enemy bonus experience awarded for first defeat of an enemy of this type. For defeating an enemy 10 levels or more above you, you have been granted the title Slayer damage against targets that are a higher level than you is increased. Artificer leveled to 3. Soldier leveled to 3. Artificer level 3 skills. Improved manipulation. Manipulate the form of a material. Reduced cost for created materials. Soldier level 3 skills. Recon by fire designate one projectile, which will detect hostile entities within 30 feet for 2 minutes. Cooldown, 10 minutes. Mana cost, low. Oh, I leveled up after that griffin, said Xander. I guess that's not too surprising considering how low a level I am. Let me get this turned around for you now that I've read through all this. Xander again willed his status sheet to turn around to face outward, but this time focused on all the details of it. Looks good so far, said Dorley. I can see it's your full status. Very nice titles there for your level. I assume that you got Slayer from the Griffin? Xander nodded. I'll get to copying this down. Let's see. Xander Jones, human... Dorley began copying out the status sheet while occasionally glancing back up to confirm some information. In only a couple minutes, she had completed the copy. Xander Jones, human gods marked Heaven's Bounty. You may receive additional objects from defeated foes, speak in tongues. Proficiency in languages of New Realm, provided quest patrons may provide you with tasks and rewards. Reformation, physical ailments and deformities have been healed. Cargo space integrated inventory function in status window titled. You have a greater chance of receiving titles than normal regenerative. You heal more quickly than usual, to the point where, given enough time, you may even regrow a limb. Slayer damage against targets that are a higher level than you is increased. Artificer level 3 store. Analyzed materials are stored for future usage by creation. Analyze. Determine the material and relevant properties of an object within 1 foot of caster creation, creates a stored material. Mana cost depends on quantity, rarity, and other factors. Mana cost. Low-high improved manipulation. Manipulate the form of a material, reduced cost for created materials. Measure, determine exact measurements of an object that has been analyzed. Schematic, store entire objects to be used with creation. Soldier level 3, eternal march. Increased endurance. Scales with level. Weapons of war. Additional proficiency with melee and ranged weaponry. Scales with level. Shock and awe. Inflict significant additional damage upon a successful strike. Mana cost. Medium. Cooldown, 3 minutes. Sprint. Increase movement speed. Mana cost. Low effective ordnance. You may imbue an elemental effect into one attack. Mana cost. Medium. Cooldown, 3 minutes. There we are, said Dorley. Now we just have to get you signed on. Wait a moment while I grab a copy of the membership forms from the back room. She retreated from the counter to a door set into the far wall before returning a short time later with another few pieces of paper in her hands. Okay, so all you have to do is sign here. Dorley indicates a blank space on the paper. And you'll be an official member. Don't worry about dues or fees that comes out of the payments for your successful contracts. All these papers really say is that if you do anything illegal, steal from or harass another guild member, etc., etc., then the guild reserves the right to revoke your membership. Feel free to take your time reading it, though. Xander took the small stack of papers, which was revealed to be 2 copies, which he assumed meant he would be able to keep one, and leafed through them. True to her world, the majority of the document was rules about conduct of guild members. Nothing stood out to him for any of the rules, and the rest seemed to outline how the guild took its cut of payments for contracts. I think I'm fine with this. I'll sign now. One of these is for me to keep? That's right. We found it's good practice to give new members a copy of the rules. It saves us from hearing the lame excuses of, but I didn't know I couldn't do that, we used to hear so often. Dorley slid the quill and ink pot over toward Xander. He took the proffered items and signed, awkwardly, as he'd never used a quill before. There, now you are an official member of the Mercenaries Guild. There are branches all across the continent in multiple kingdoms. Membership, which can be proved by this, Dorley pulled a small metal pendant of 2 crossed spears, can get you through a lot of tolls at city gates, too. Welcome to the guild and good luck on all your contracts. Is there anything else you need? I don't think so. Oh, Thripus said you could tell me how to get to Talon's, right? Oh, yes, I'd forgotten about that. Take a left out once you get out of the door and just keep walking that direction. You'll see the sign soon enough. It's covered in the talons of just about every beast you could think of. All right, thanks. Always happy to help a new guild member. Stop by soon and I can help you look through the contracts and get you some more information about the exploration contract I'll be signing you up for. Will do. Thanks again. Xander made his way out of the building and turned left. Soon enough, he came upon a building with a sign hanging from its eaves that read Talon's Mark and was adorned with a number of talons. Xander noticed one that looked like the griffin's talon he had sold, but the rest were a mystery. There were so many to prevent the words carved into the sign from being covered that quite a few of the talons were tied to strings and hung from the sign. Once he located the door to the establishment, Xander made his way inside. The Talon's Mark was a lively tavern. The tables scattered across the open space were mostly full, and the bar was similarly full. Xander stood in the doorway for a moment, feeling awkward as he tried to locate Thripus. The dwarf's height was not doing Xander any favors in making it easier for him to find Thripus. A few more agonizing moments of searching, and he finally caught sight of the dwarf at the bar with a fortunately empty seat next to him. Xander moved to sit down next to the dwarf. Hi, Thripus. I got all set up at the guild. There was even an exploration contract coming up that I'm getting my name on. Yeah, I've heard about that one. The guild will be happy to have you on it. They've been trying to find a few more people to get on that contract for a week or two now. Not so many people are as keen on exploration contracts as they are on kill contracts. Why is that? Well, part of it is that some people view exploration as more work than just hunting down something and killing it, even if it is less dangerous. The other, and more important part, is that many classes gain experience through defeating things. They might also have other ways to gain experience in that class, but essentially being paid to progress is appealing to a lot of people. I guess that makes sense. Maybe I'm just not confident enough in my abilities yet, or maybe I'm just risk-averse, but kill contracts just don't appeal to me as much as exploring. I'm sure I'll end up taking some eventually, though. I don't fancy ending up poor. Well, the guild is the right place for you, then. Play your cards right, and you can take some very well-paying contracts, assuming you meet the requirements. As it is right now, though, it's pretty unlikely you would. As you level up, though, more and more things will become available to you. Oh yeah, speaking of leveling up, it turns out I leveled up after we killed that griffin. And I got a title from it, said Xander. His casual comment about slaying griffins and gaining titles drew a few inquisitive looks for a moment from the people seated closely, but no one interjected, and they all returned to their drinks. Not surprising, considering the level difference between you two. I'd be more surprised to hear that you hadn't. The only shock is that it took you that long to notice. Suppose you're just not in the habit yet of checking it frequently. You'll get used to it and find yourself opening it all the time. The title's rarer, but not exactly out of line for striking the killing blow like you did on an enemy significantly more leveled than you are. What was it? Get anything good? It's, Hold on, let me check again. Xander opened his status sheet again and looked at his new title. It's called Slayer, and it makes me deal more damage to things that are higher leveled than me. Ooh, that's a good one, said Thripus, who seemed not the slightest bit drunk despite having already knocked back an entire cup of whatever he was drinking during their conversation and starting on a refill the barkeep had poured him. Not the most uncommon one to have, I've actually got it myself, but it's nice to have in a pinch, I can tell you that. That's good to know. Are there lots of titles? I don't really know much about them. Do they all provide some kind of bonus? And do those drinks not hit you at all? Oh, it's the endurance stat. That and the fact that I'm a dwarf. Between the two, it's a pain in the ass to actually get drunk. As far as titles are concerned, there are more than I could even begin to count. Not all of them give a bonus, though. It just seems that they're a recognition of whatever it is that controls the status sheets has deemed to be a worthy feat. Most think it's the gods. Not all are good, though. Dorley might have told you during the check of your status that she'd be looking for any titles that would disqualify you. Things like murderer, rapist, desecrator. Titles like these can mark you as someone who has committed crimes. It's not a foolproof way of catching someone, as there's no guarantee that you'll get the title after doing it, but the guild wants to keep out as much scum as it can. The chance of having something like that permanently branded on your sheet is a good deterrent, too. It just about guarantees that you'll end up run out of town. I see. Glad to learn that. Not that I'd intended on doing any of those things. How do I go about getting a room here? And a meal, too. I'm pretty hungry now that I think about it. I've never stayed at an inn like this before. Things were different where I came from. Places to eat and places to stay at were generally separate things. Just call the barkeep over. Briggs is here tonight, and he's the owner of the place. Used to be a mercenary, that's where all the Talons on the sign came from. Most of them are trophies from some contract or other he took back in his younger days, although it's tradition at this point for a patron to give Briggs a Talon to put up on the sign if they come across one that isn't already up. They get some free drinks out of it, too. He and his wife Gertie run a tight place. Things might get loud, but fights aren't tolerated, the food is good, and the beds are clean enough. It's a good price for what you get. Briggs! Thripus called over to the man behind the bar, who was currently filling up mugs with what Xander assumed was beer. My friend here wants to rent a room for a week or two, and a meal, too, when you've got the time. Briggs waved in Thripus's direction to signal that he'd heard, and went about placing the mugs he'd filled in front of different patrons. Afterwards, he made his way over to Thripus and Xander. A meal and a room, eh? I think I can oblige you long as you've got the coin. If you've made a friend of Thripus, then you're lucky, assuming he's as loyal a friend as he is a customer. Do you even drink anywhere else, Thripus? Briggs laughed slightly as he ribbed Thripus. I can vouch he's got the coin, and I expect he'd like something simple. At this, Thripus turned his head to Xander, who nodded. He's new to town, and, well, everywhere else, too. At this, Thripus very obviously mouthed Godsmarked to the barkeep, which Xander presumed was to keep attention away from him that would be drawn if Thripus had actually said the word aloud. He appreciated it if that was the case. So he's a bit tight on funds, if you catch my meaning. Maybe you could throw him the welcome-to-town discount, yeah? Briggs nodded sagely. I see. Met a few like you when I was still doing guild work, so I know starting out fresh like that can be hard. I think I can work out a bit of a discount for you. How long will you be staying?" Xander pondered the question for a moment. I'll be leaving this next week to go on an exploration contract, but Dorley didn't give me the exact date. I was supposed to get more information about it tomorrow." "Oh, that contract. There's another guildie staying here already for that one. You'll want to be staying for 5 days then." Xander was glad that Briggs happened to know the date he'd be leaving. 5 days would give him some time to learn about the town and pick up some supplies. He'd have to ask Dorley what he'd need, as well as read up on the literature he'd brought with him for ideas. "5 days then, thanks for letting me know. For your circumstances, I can do a silver a day, meals included." Xander looked over to Thripus, who nodded, signaling that this was good deal. "Sounds good. I can pay now? I've got, Xander placed his hand under the bar counter for a moment and surreptitiously called some coins out of his inventory space. "How many of these little copper coins make a silver?" "Gods, Thripus! You really weren't lying about him being new. You didn't teach him anything about money? You're lucky he didn't stop to buy anything between here and the guild. Some merchant would have robbed him blind." Briggs chastised the dwarf for his lack of financial advice. 10 of those is a silver, and 10 silver make a gold. After that, it's platinum, which is 1,000 gold, but you hardly ever see those around these parts, so that'll be 5 silver. Xander quickly pulled some more copper coins out of his inventory until he had 50 of the small copper discs and placed them on the counter for Briggs, who quickly scooped them up and counted them faster than Xander would have thought possible. "Pleasure doing business with you. I'll bring you by some stew and an ale if that's to your liking. What's your name, by the way?" "Xander. Nice to meet you." "Sure, stew sounds fine. I'm just happy to eat." "Nice to meet you yourself. Name's Briggs if you hadn't caught on already." Briggs turned to his right and headed towards a door to another area behind the bar, presumably a kitchen area, collecting more empty mugs as he went. Thripus turned to Xander and said, "I'm just about finished here, and planning to hit my bed like a rock. Glad you caught me before I left so I could swing you a deal with Briggs. He's always been fond of the marked after working with a few of them. If you need to find any place or anyone, you can ask him for directions. Man knows the layout of the town like it was his own tavern. He'll get you there with no trouble. Good luck on your contract, and feel free to visit before you go." With that, Thripus placed a few coins on the counter, hopped down off his bar stool, which Xander now noticed was taller than his own stool, and headed to the door. Despite the crowded atmosphere, Xander now felt very alone. Briggs brought him his food and drink and collected the coin Thripus had left. "Once you're finished, I'll have Gertie show you up to your room. The barmaid's off tonight, so it's just me and her tonight." Xander nodded and ate quickly. The stew was good, hearty, and full of what was close enough to be potatoes. The ale was less appealing, as Xander had never much cared for beer, but he was thirsty, so he drank it. When he was finished, he caught Briggs' eye and waved at him as he was passing by with more empty mugs. "I'll have Gertie out in a second with your key to show you the way," said Briggs, as he passed by with his armload of mugs. A few moments after he'd gone into the kitchen area, a woman around the same age as Briggs, who appeared in his mid-40s, came out the same door. Seemingly knowing exactly where Xander was, she walked to him and said, "I'm told you'll be staying the next few days with us. Always happy to host a friend of Thripus. Come along this way and I'll get you upstairs and to your room." Gertie gestured towards a staircase and exited the bar through a small gate where the bar ended before it would hit the wall. Xander followed, silent for lack of anything that felt worthwhile to say. Gertie led him up the stairs and into a hallway lined with doors. "This one is mine and Briggs. If you need anything and can't find us downstairs, that's where we'll be," she said, pointing at the door to a room that seemed to be larger than the others, if the space between it and the next door was any indication. "And this one is yours." Gertie stopped in front of the 4th door on the right. "Here's your key. And don't hesitate to ask if you need us, dearie. Briggs told me that you're new to town, as it were." Xander offered a nod and a "thanks" in response before entering his room. Tired from a day of walking followed by strange social interactions, he locked the door, stripped down, and got in the bed. Laying there with the muffled sounds of the patrons below coming through the floor, the realization that he was not at home, not even on Earth, and that he really might not see his wife, his family, or his friends ever again finally started to come crashing down on him. He began to cry, and continued to do so until he fell asleep. If you love engaging stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with all the latest episodes from FY Stories.